Hey, if you are visiting, if you're watching online for the first time, if you're in the building for the first time, or regardless of what time it is, we want to say a huge welcome to you. If you don't know me, my name is Robert, and I am one of the pastors here at Epicentre Church. And I am excited to have you with us this morning, excited to have you joining us online this morning. And I think I've got a pretty good-looking assistant. For those of you that don't know, that is my wife. She chose well. Yes. I chose well. Well, I better make that right before I leave here, or you'll never see me again. So I bet that well, this is my assumption anyways, that most of us like or enjoy movies, TV shows, series. Is that correct? Yeah. Is it movies now or is it TV series? Both. Who prefers TV series or movies? Series. I love series because it feels like it never ends. You can watch a little bit of now and then watch a bit more later, like tomorrow, and it just feels like it never ends. But I think most of us enjoy TV or movies or just entertainment probably in general, and specifically if you're a part of a family, most of us, or at least we do anyways, I'm assuming you guys that have got young kids as well, do something similar where you might have a family movie time, family show time, or whatever it is. Like at the moment, we're watching Hunted with the kids. Anyone seen that? It's fantastic. The kids, they're on the edge of their chair, like, why would they make such a stupid decision? And so they're enjoying it, but we enjoy our family movies, family TV shows, and things like that. And I think we all enjoy entertainment. And there was a movie that we watched, and some of you will know it. I think it's The Lost Kingdom, The Lost City. Hey? Okay. I think we watched it together. I'm sure we watched it together. Anyways, it's a movie with Sandra Bullock and Shannon Tatum in it. And so Sandra Bullock, her name in the movie is Loretta. Shannon's name, well, he's got two names. He's like, however you pronounce it. You know who I'm talking about. Shazza. You know, he's a good-looking guy. I'm not afraid to say it. You're too scared to say it, guys, perhaps, but you know who I'm talking about. Anyway, so he plays this guy called Dasher, who's also called Alan in the movie. And so the movie is this, like, Loretta, she's an author, she's a writer. And she writes these adventure stories about this guy called Dasher. And he gets up to all these incredible adventures, like he's like Indiana Jones sort of thing. And so that every book launch, basically this guy, Channing, like this guy Channing, whose name in the movie is Alan, who plays Dasher. And so Dasher is a fictional character in the stories that Loretta writes. And Alan is the guy that goes to all the book launches and, well, he's basically the mascot. And so every time she does a book launch, this is part of her contract that Dasher's got to be there, although it's Alan. And she hates Alan. She hates him because all the girls at the book launch love him to start with. They think he's a spunk. They think he's sexy. They think he's all of that. Do you want to turn the house lights on, please, people, so I can see everyone's faces? She absolutely despises him, can't stand him, hates him. Hates him because he's annoying, because the girls like him. Hates him for a multitude of reasons. Just absolutely despises this guy. And some of you are like, I know where this is going. Why don't I know where this is going? Because it's Hollywood. It always goes the same way. But anyways, so Loretta ends up getting kidnapped. Why does she get kidnapped? No one really knows as to why but she gets kidnapped. She gets kidnapped and whisked away, and then Dasher, or Alan, decides that it's his role, his responsibility to go and rescue her. And so he goes to the jungle, and so he's Dasher in the books, but he's Alan in real life. Indiana Jones in the books, but, well, he's never even put two twigs together to start a campfire in real life. Like, he has no idea about the outdoors, the wilderness, let alone remote countries. And so he goes to rescue her, and it's a flop after a flop after a flop, and she is just devastated that he's there rescuing her. To the point, Brad Pitt turns up, and she's excited about Brad Pitt turning up to rescue her, but Brad Pitt, he falls apart, he dies, and she's left with Alan. And so needless to say, at the end of the story, if you haven't watched it, what ends up happening is that she realizes that this is the guy that she has been looking for her entire life. This really annoying, frustrating, irritating person that she cannot stand. It's been her Prince Charming that's been there the whole time. She hated him, despised him, wanted nothing to do with him. Then all of a sudden, her eyes are opened, and my gosh, he's been there, right there this whole time. And you know how it ends. They always end up happily ever after, like my one true love. I think all of us at different periods of time, I think in general, everyone enjoys a good rom-com. Is that correct? Maybe you guys don't want to admit it, but I know secretly, deep down, that you do. And maybe specifically when we're single, it means something different than maybe when we're married. But we all enjoy a good rom-com because it does something. It shifts something. It moves something in our hearts. And single girls, this is what it does for you. Specifically, just talking to the single ladies for a second, I know what it does. It's like when my Prince Charming turns up. You may not call him Prince Charming. You may call him something else. I don't know what weird names y'all have got for each other. But you might call him something else. And when he turns up, it's this idea that when I meet that person, my eyes are going to open, and I'm going to realize, and I'm going to see I have the perfect person standing right there in front of me. And you picture it, and you imagine it like he's got the perfect set of abs, doesn't he, girls? His abs are fantastic. That's why Sage married me. I took my shirt off one day, and she's like, oh my gosh. Yes, it is a joke, yes. And so single girls, you do that, and then the guys on the other hand, single guys, like we don't like to admit it, but it does the same thing to us. We get the same, but it's not her abs that we think about. It's something else, and we'll probably just leave that there. But the reality is, and I know I'm stereotyping. I know it's not necessarily correct for everyone, but all of us, I think, to a degree, connect with it and understand what it is that we're talking about. And so, hey, this morning, what we're starting, what we're launching off the back of that humorous, perhaps, I'll regain your attention in a minute. We're starting this new sermon series called the New Rules of Love, where we're rediscovering God's design for relationship. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take 4 weeks to go through this and go over this and talk about these new rules of love. But to be honest, these new rules are not new at all. In fact, these new rules, they're ancient and they're old, and they're what God scattered, what we believe throughout the Bible of if you follow these things, what we believe is you'll find yourself in a relationship that is life-giving rather than life-sucking or taking as far as destroying. And so what we believe when it comes to the new rules of love, they're not new at all, but they're old and ancient and something that God's been talking to us throughout time. If you follow these things, you've got a better chance to set yourself up for success. Now, I know perhaps some of you are thinking this, like, are these just going to be like what a general Christian would stand up and say when it comes to the Bible, like these are the new rules and you have to do this and you have to do that. And some of you might be, upon hearing that, a bit worried as far as like, is it going to abuse me? Because for some of you, perhaps you've come from the teaching where, as far as women, you need to submit to your husbands. And is this going to be one of those new rules, taking it back to that? Or if I'm dating, the only way to date correctly is to not have sex before marriage. And if you do that, everything is going to be good. And while they're kind of good rules with context to understand, that's not what we're talking about throughout this series. What we're talking about is some things that if you actively take and apply into your marriage, your relationship, your dating, it will be good. So these new rules, they're not necessarily new at all. They're old and they're ancient, but they've got timeless value for us here today. And you might be sitting there thinking like, well, I'm older and I'm single. Maybe I was divorced or I've been divorced at a time, and I just don't even know if I'm interested in getting back into a relationship again. Like, what point is it for me? Like, is there anything in this for me to get out of this? Like, I'm not sure if I'm interested in regaining a relationship. And to you, I'd say this, that number one, all this is interchangeable with just relationships in general. Everything we talk about throughout this, you'll be able to take and you'll be able to use most of it, not all of it, most of it in regards to just general relationship between friends and family and different things. But on top of that, if you're single, I bet you've got people in your life that are married. And maybe as we go through this, if you're that older single person or divorcee or what have you, I'm not interested in getting back into a relationship. You'll have single people in your life that are not single people in your life. You'll have married people in your life. And perhaps as we're going through this, you'll be like, that's the problem that they've got going on. And maybe you'll have some wisdom to be able to impart to them, to encourage them. Or maybe you're younger and you're single. And you're like, again, like, I'm not sure if I'm interested in dating or starting that again. I don't know about this. Like, what's in it for me? Well, statistically, if you're in that younger age group, you're not dating yet, but if you're there, statistically, at least once in your life, you're going to be romantically involved. And this is what we want for you. If you're young and single and you're not dating, or maybe you are dating, we want the romantic relationship that you find yourself in to be a life-giving one. We want your future relationship to be good, to be healthy. And so in as much as what we're talking about relationships, and a lot of it's addressed at marriage, and I'm trying really hard to connect with you single people as well throughout this, it's to do with everyone. And so scattered throughout this series, what we're doing is every Wednesday night and Thursday night, we've got a date night. Wednesday nights, we've got a date night for the married people. So this place is going to become a restaurant. It's already fully booked. If you want to join, you can book, and we'll see if we can get you on the roster. But for the most part, it's fully booked. So Wednesdays and Thursdays, this is going to become a restaurant where we're going to engage with the married people and the single people on a really deeper level and take what we're talking about here and add depth to it. Why? Because we want your current marriage, future relationship to be healthy. But if you're married, as we go through this, some of you are we're gonna perhaps, as we go through week and week, you're gonna be starting to think, he's talking about my relationship. He's talking about my marriage, and I'm realizing all these flaws and these struggles, and I'm realizing that he's not interested in this, or I'm not, or she's not, and part of you, or some of you are going to start posing to yourselves this question: are we going to survive? As we go through this is what I believe, that for some of the weeks it's going to hit you hard, and you're like, can we get through this? I'm just realizing this is a way bigger problem than what I realized it was. Are we going to get through this? Maybe at the beginning, for some of you guys that are married or in long-term relationships, you're wondering that question: can we get through this? Can we get through this series, this season that we're currently in? I already know that we're on the rocks. Can we get through this? This is what we believe as a church. This is what I firmly believe, that we worship a redemptive God. That nothing is beyond the realms of his redemption. Your marriage is not beyond the realms of his redemption, where two people come together and say, I want to work on this, I want to fight for this. And specifically in keeping with a Christian theme, as far as we're going to connect with God and allow God in here and God to work on it. Nothing is beyond the realms of his redemption, of breathing life back into it. And so no matter where you find yourself in this, you might find yourself with no hope. There's no hope. There's always hope. If there's Jesus, there's always hope. So that's the next 4 weeks of what we're going through. And so to start with, when it comes to dating specifically and relationships, specifically in the West anyways, we've, I think, bought into this lie, and it's kind of this lie that I introed with in the movie. This lie highlighting that the perfect person has always been there and I never found them. But all of a sudden I've realized they're there. My eyes have been opened and now I realize they're there and everything will be good because I found them. Like everything's going to be rosy now because I have discovered or I have found the perfect person. Now I understand that part of it, or at least at this point, if you're from a different culture, where perhaps there's arranged marriages, this first section of what I'm talking about may not necessarily connect with you, but as we go through it, you're going to be like, yeah, I exactly hear what he's talking about, where we're going, what we're talking about. But it's specifically in the West, we've kind of bought into this lie consciously as well as subconsciously. And the lie is this. The lie is the myth of the perfect match. And the myth of the perfect match says that when I meet the right person, everything's going to be good. Like when I meet my Alan, or when I meet, he's called Dash as well, it's confusing, he's got two names in the movie, but when I meet him and discover him and realize everything is going to be good. Like when I find, like you girls, when I find that guy that's got really good abs, everything will be good. When I find that woman that doesn't nag, everything's going to be good. Don't laugh too much, David. Julie may not be here, but we'll tell her. Yeah. As far as when I meet that person, like everything will be well. And so we've kind of bought into this subconsciously as well as consciously. This is how we date. This is how we do marriage. When like they are meant to make me right. This idea, in case you didn't know, this comes from Greek mythology. And so, this idea comes from here, where the god Zeus, like Greek mythology would said, like, I don't know when, a long, long time ago, the god Zeus got so angry with humans that he split them down the middle, like cutting them in half, forcing them to wander the earth looking for their perfect other half. So the idea being, like if Sage, she's my lovely wife, of course. So the god Zeus got so angry with her, he cut her down the middle, putting her in two halves, sending them apart. And now the curse of humans was this: to walk around the earth searching for my perfect other half. Hence the words that we have of "you complete me." We say that at weddings so often in our vows, that you complete me. We talk about that when we're dating them, that you're so good for me because you complete me. You complete me is realistically, it's a myth. It's a myth. In fact, what I'd suggest is this when it comes to relationships specifically. The idea of you complete me says this, that I was not whole until I met you, and now I'm being made whole. But the truth is this, that the two broken pieces, two halves, when it comes to relationships, will never make a whole. Two broken people do not make a whole. Two broken people make more brokenness. And if you're married, you need to know this. And single people, you need to realize this too. This is really, really, really important. If you're single and dating, two broken people create more brokenness. And if you're expecting the person that you are married to, or the person at some point that you were going to marry, that they're going to complete you and they're going to make you whole, you are lumping something on them that was never theirs to carry. And we're specifically, when we get to week 4, we're going to talk about this in detail. It was never theirs to carry. It's meant to be Jesus. Jesus was the one that was supposed to carry that. But the majority of us have bought into this lie. And for some of you, it's subconscious. But as we go through, you're going to be like, yeah, I see how I've bought into that. Where it's the myth of the perfect person. And you need to know, specifically if you're single, that the person that you are dating will not complete you. The person that you are looking for will not complete you. And so many of us get married buying into this lie that when I marry them, everything is going to be good. This is what we end up doing. We have this problem plus marriage equals solve. That's how a lot of us think. And some of you single people are like, there's no way I will think like that. That's stupid. Who thinks like that? Nearly everyone that's got married. I've got this problem that she's going to solve for me. I've got this problem that he's going to solve for me. So many of us start our relationships and our marriage like that. And it never works. Statistically, it never works. You think of the big thing, shotgun weddings. And if you don't know what a shotgun wedding is, basically it's someone got pregnant without getting married, and we want to do the right thing, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to get married. Statistically, they never work. I know there's always stories of them working, but statistically, they fall apart. They don't work. Why? Because problem plus marriage doesn't equal solve. It equals like really bad volcano eruptions. It's not healthy. And so many of people do this. These are real things. And a whole lot of this, when it comes to, like when we do marital counseling, when I have people come to my office for marriage counseling, a lot of it all stems back to this, whether it's consciously realized or not, that I thought if I married them, all of this would be better. And so it kind of looks like this. Like there's so many guys, even girls as well, they've got a porn problem. And they have this thought that when I meet that person, when I get married, I'll have no problems with pornography. It'll be fine. It'll be good. It'll finish. Why is it going to finish? Because I've always got or I've always got him. And then they get married and they discover it doesn't do it. It does the opposite. It gets worse. And then it goes on as far as maybe the guy or the girl that's like struggling with rejection, struggling with feeling rejected. When I marry him, when I marry her, it's all going to be well because I won't be rejected because he said I do to me. And so that means he always says I do, he always chooses me. Or it's the flip side that she's always going to choose me. And so once that happens, there's not going to be any rejection. And then like 3 months in, 4 months in, 2 years in, like, oh my gosh. Rejection turns back up and it continues on. Like you might struggle with communication, but when we get married, it's going to be good. Because we'll always be together. There'll be no problems with communicating because we'll always be there together. And then you get married. And I can see you married people smirking because like it makes it worse because now they're always talking to me. But you single people think that when we get married, because we'll always be together, our communication will work naturally, but it doesn't. But it doesn't. The problems continue on. Or like intimacy. When I get married, I'm not good at being transparent and open, but they'll love me so much. She will love me so much. He will adore me so much. They'll have no problems at all with intimacy. And so we're like, I've got a problem. And then if I get married, it'll equal solve. That's how we think. And then what happens? We have problem. We add marriage. We add explosion. It gets worse. The reality is that all of this stuff, and you can make this list as long as you want, as many things as you can think of, you can add to this. If we think that marriage is going to fix it, it doesn't. Marriage does this. It exaggerates it. It'll make it bigger. It'll make it more in your face. It'll make it worse. It'll make it really, really evident. In fact, what we'll end up doing is, if it's problem plus marriage equals solve, what we do is this. We take our problem and we put it in our backpack and then we walk into our marriage and we drop the problem into our marriage. We drag the problem into our marriage. And then we call it this. We call it a marriage problem. And a lot of this stems back to this, the myth of the perfect match. The myth of the perfect match. Here's the reality. What I've discovered through meeting and counseling with people is there's pretty well no such thing as a marriage problem. All the counseling that I do that appears to be a marriage problem is never a marriage problem. This is what I'll show you what a marriage argument looks like. There's literally a marriage problem. It looks like, how do you hang the toilet paper? It does. It's like, how do I hang the toilet paper? What are we going to eat for dinner? Where are we going to go on holidays? What do you want to watch? They're marriage arguments and debates that they should never be, but they can become like squeezing the toothpaste. I don't know how many arguments happen over that. And then you add kids to it, and everyone, like now you got 5 different people and 5 different ideas on how to squeeze the toothpaste, where to leave the toothbrushes. They're marriage problems, okay? They're family problems. They're marriage problems. But what we generally do when it comes to the marriage problems that we end up in counseling over or that sort of things, what they are single problems, single person problems that we chose to never deal with. And now I've dragged that into my marriage. Now my marriage is dealing with it. We call it a marriage problem, but realistically it was my problem over here that I never allowed to be dealt with. And now it's called a marriage problem. Now it's called a marriage problem. And all this comes back to this idea of the myth of the perfect match. That when I meet that person, everything's going to be good. When I meet that person, they're going to complete me. When I meet that person, things will be fine. And then they're not. And our single person problems enter into marriage. And then they enter into both of everyone's lives. And now they become a marriage, or what we call a marriage problem. And the big idea that I want to get across to you all this morning is this, is that don't expect the perfect partner, rather strive to be the perfect partner. The myth of the perfect match expects them to be the perfect partner, but the reality is if you want a good marriage, if you want a good relationship, how about you start here, striving to become the perfect partner rather than expecting that person down the track, that person right in front of you, that person that said, I do to you, rather than expecting them to become the perfect partner. You with me? Yes, that's fantastic. And this is kind of good. This is important because this is about health. Like, we want a healthy relationship. Would that be correct? If you're married, do you want a healthy relationship? David does. If you're married, do you want a healthy marriage? Yes. If you're dating, do you want that to be healthy? You can say yes for the dating people, because if they don't, yeah. If you want a future marriage or the future relationship that you're in, if you want that to be healthy, it's kind of a good thing to start with some health. And so this is important because this is talking about healthy spiritually, healthy physically, and healthy emotionally. And so many people, when it comes to marriage and when it comes to relationships, is that we want them to be healthy. I want them to be physically healthy. How many of you have seen that couple where one wants them to be physically healthy, but they'll eat whatever they want? Or I want them to be spiritually healthy, but you know what? I don't read my Bible all that much. I don't connect with Jesus all that much. I don't pray all that much. But I need them to make sure they're reading them. But he's meant to be the spiritual leader of the household. And we expect something of them that we don't add to our own list. Or I'm kind of emotionally messed up, so I need them to be emotionally secure because I've got problems. And again, this is back to that myth of the perfect match, that if they have it all together, I will have it all together, but it keeps falling apart and falling apart and falling apart. So the question that I'd pose to you, and this is a rhetorical question, don't sing it out. It might go good for you, it may not. The question would be this: how healthy are you? If you were to give it on a scale of 1 to 10, how healthy are you emotionally? How healthy are you spiritually? How healthy are you physically? And it's important to perhaps answer this because it's not your job to answer for them. It's your job to answer for you. And it's not their job to support you in that. It's your job to make sure you're healthy. Don't expect them to be the perfect person. Rather, strive yourself to be the perfect person. Paul, he writes this letter to the Galatians. And he's talking about sin and salvation, but it equally applies to relationships. It equally applies to marriage. And he says this, Galatians 6 from verse 7, he says, don't be misled. Everyone say misled. Misled. Don't be misled. Single people, don't be misled. When it comes to your dating, don't be misled. If you're married, don't be misled. Don't be misled because you cannot mock, he says, the justice of God. Because for this reason, that you will always harvest what you plant. Don't be misled when it comes to relationships that you will do this. You will harvest what it is that you plant. If you're dating, don't be misled. You'll harvest, maybe not tomorrow, Maybe not the next day, maybe the next month, maybe the next year. You'll harvest what it is that you put in the ground, that you plant. So if you date deliberately expecting them to be the solve, guess what? You will reap a harvest of that. And it won't be the solve that you're expecting, but it'll be the volcano of eruption that you didn't see coming. Don't be misled. Don't be misled, because you will harvest what it is that you plant. He says, those who live only to satisfy their own sinful nature will harvest decay and death from that sinful nature. But those who live to please the Spirit will harvest everlasting life from the Spirit. So let's do this. So let's not get tired of doing what is good. Let's not get tired of doing what is good. That word doing, it's a doing word. That you actively do something. Don't get tired. Don't get tired of doing what is good. If you're dating, don't get tired of doing what is good. If you're not dating yet, don't get tired of doing what you're good. If you are married, don't get tired of doing what is good. Even when she annoys you, even when he frustrates you, don't get tired of doing what is good. Keep at it, keep working at it. Because he says this, at just the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up. So we don't give up doing what is good, because at the right time, something will happen. A harvest will happen if we don't give up. So perhaps another way of rewording that is this. Don't get tired of striving to become the perfect person, but do get tired of trying to mold them into the perfect person. Single people, you need to realize when you get married, single people, when you get into a committed relationship, maybe it's not marriage for you, maybe it's a committed relationship, realize this, that your language changes. And you develop really, really clever ways of hitting them in the stomach, figuratively. And we end up starting to use this language that makes me seem like I'm good, seem like I'm admitting that I've got problems, and then at the same time, smacking them across the face. And look, we do it all the time, but we get really crafty with it when we get married. And some of you guys are like married, you're like, you're going to hear what I'm saying in a second. But single people, you need to realize that things start changing when we get married, because what we think is that they're going to complete us, and we realize that they don't, and they're frustrated, and they've got things that they need to work on so that life will be better for me. So if I can get them to deal with that issue, then I will be happy. It becomes all about me. It's not a life-giving relationship. It's a life-sucking relationship. We get good at using these words, but, you, but, I, but if, but something. And generally what it's worded like is this. And so single people specifically, for a second, when married couples come to me, or people come to me for relationship counseling, there's always a but. And it's normally worded like this. It's normally worded as far as, I realize that, like, I'm not perfect. I did this and I did that, but if you just stopped, or I realized that, like, I've got some issues, but if you stop doing this, and like, I'm all about really healthy communication and talking through problems, but these things should never come with a but. If you're addressing your problems, they should never come with a but. You're addressing your problems. But so often when it comes to marriage, our marriage confrontation, because confrontation is healthy, and dealing with things, end up escalating into a mountain of problems because we insert a but when we should really have been taking ownership of what I had to do, of what I did was wrong. And if they don't take ownership, there's nothing you can do about it. You can't manipulate them into ownership. You can highlight it, but you cannot force them into ownership. But we try to force them into ownership of it, and we do it sneakily, because if I say that I am highlighting that I've got problems there, but if we think that they'll listen to me because I've been transparent and I have pretended, all I've done is given lip service. I've given lip service to my part of the problem, but what I'm doing is I am exaggerating theirs. When it comes to this, like, but you, but they, but I, like, Jesus is so direct. When it comes to this, like Jesus, he is so direct, specifically in dealing with his disciples, so direct when it's talking about highlighting wrongs and confronting people. And Jesus ends up having this conversation with his disciples where he's talking about this very matter. And he goes all the way back to his childhood and pulling examples out of his childhood. And he's like, you know what, guys, I grew up as a carpenter. Like Dad was a carpenter. We'd work in the woodshed and there'd be sawdust flying everywhere. And at some point, you get sawdust in your eye. And when you get sawdust in your eye, it's difficult and it struggles and it feels big, really big. Anyone got anything in their eye? Ever got a bug in your eye? Anyone ever noticed that the bug feels like it's in your eye, but it feels like it's the size of an elephant? It's a tiny bug, but all of a sudden you can't see anything. It's this really tiny bug in your eye, but you can't see anything. He starts talking about this as far as, like, you get stuff in your eye and it's difficult and you can't see properly, and it's only a speck of sawdust. There's nothing to it all, but it feels huge. It's like a plank of wood stuck in my eye. And he's like, but you know, at some point, like I was in the workshop, my brother James was there, and there's sawdust going everywhere. And at one point, we both got some dust in us, like some sawdust in our eyes. We both got some sawdust in our eyes, and then you're trying to point out to him that he's got this plank of wood in his eye, and he's like, you've got a plank of wood in your eye. And you know what? When you're married, marriage is a lot like working in the wood shop. Because at some point, you're going to be working with wood, and there's going to be sawdust flying everywhere, and what's going to happen? You're both going to get, at some point, sawdust in your eyes at the same time. And this is what we do when we've got sawdust in our eyes. So often of us, as married people, we end up saying, but you. What are we doing? We're highlighting how big their problem is and minimizing how small our problem is. I know that's not always the case, but 98% of the time, when I sit and counsel with couples, when they insert the but you, it's to get them to change. It's lip service to ownership. But that is all it is. It is lip service to ownership. Why? Because we don't want to admit that we're wrong. And because we have bought into this lie, specifically as Westerners, of the myth of the perfect match, that they are meant to complete me. They are meant to make me right. They are meant to fix me. They are meant to give me enjoyment. We've bought into that. I know some of you are thinking, well, that wouldn't be me. I wouldn't do that. Reality is, statistically, you would. You talk to any marriage counselor, you would. We're all about self-serving. So Jesus has this conversation where he's like, you know what? When it comes to this, when it comes to you both got sawdust in your eyes, and specifically in keeping with marriage, he says it like this. Why worry about a speck in your friend's, in your spouse's eye, when you have a whole log in your own? Why worry about the small, little, minuscule speck that you've got? When you've got this giant log in your eye, you just can't see it. You want to insert a but you. And he continues on. How can you think of saying to your friend, or insert your friend, be it your spouse, be it your partner, be it your boyfriend, be it your girlfriend, how can you think of saying to them, let me help you get rid of that speck in your eye, when you can't see past the whole log that is in yours? When you can't see past all that, why on earth are you trying to say to them, you need to deal with that, when you won't even deal with the thing that you've got? And he continues this conversation on when he's like, you know what you need to do? This is what you need to do. First and foremost, you need to deal with the thing that's in your own eye, rather than trying to deal with the thing that's in their eye. So why don't we start doing this? If you're married, do this. If you're not married, do this. If you're a single person, not dating, do this. If you're dating, do this. Open up your Bible and start doing this. God, what is it that you want to highlight to me, about me, that I need to deal with? How do you want to confront me? What do you want to change in my life? What do you want to confront me with that there's a speck, but it's realistically a log? It's this huge thing. What do you want to confront with me? Because if I'm honest, I spend more time, not Sage is perfect. I spend more time, even just with relationships, reading through something, and then like, that's their problem. What I'm reading about now, that's the problem that person's got. If they just read this and understood this, that would be their problem solved. We all do it. Every single one of us do it. We read into the scripture what's wrong with them, rather than allow the scripture to speak to me, minister to me, confront me, challenge me, convict me. How about we spend time praying and asking God, God, confront me, come and see me, come and view me, come and point out to me everything that you don't want that's in me. And maybe you're not sure of what you think of all this. You're not sure of what you think of God, and so you're like, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to open my Bible and read it. It's a load of rubbish. I'm not going to pray to the fairy tale. It's a load of rubbish. And if that's you and you're on the journey, that's fantastic. But this is what you could do. Go and ask 5 different people to confront you on what's wrong with you. If you don't want to connect with God, go and ask 5 people that you trust, that you got a good relationship with, and say, hey, I want you to be brutally honest. Tell me what's wrong with me. Highlight what's wrong with me. We need to get a whole lot better at doing this. Why do we need to get a whole lot better at doing this? Because we bought into this idea that someone else's job is to complete me and make me whole and make me good. It's never their job. That's Jesus' job. That's God's job. What we're supposed to do is connect with him. Say, God, what is it that you want to share with me? What is it that you want to get through to me? What is it that you want to highlight to me? What is it that you want to confront me with? And I think if we do that, if we spend more time striving to become the perfect person and striving to turn them and mold them into the perfect person, that we'll end up with a marriage that works, a marriage that is functional, that we'll end up with a relationship that works, that is functional, that is life-giving rather than absolutely exhausting. And so some of you, maybe this morning the penny's dropped. This is a struggle that we've got. This is a struggle that I've got. As we go through this series, maybe it's not today, but maybe as we go through it, the penny's going to drop. Next week when we talk about communication, maybe for some of you the penny will drop, or maybe the next week with connection, the penny will drop. And some of you might start thinking, like what I talked about at the start, that when the penny drops, are we going to be able to pull through this, to get through this? And my response to be with that, specifically if you're married and you're not sure with some of the stuff that we talk about throughout this series, it'll bring stuff up and you're like, are we going to get through this? Like I said at the start, we serve and we worship a redemptive God, and there's nothing he can't redeem. So I want to end with this one story, specifically because sometimes I realize you get to a point in your marriage where you're not sure if you're going to be able to get through this. Like perhaps it's too far gone. Perhaps it's not going to be able to be redeemed. Perhaps it's at the end, like he did that, she did that. There's no way back from that. What we believe is we believe in a redeeming God. And so one story, it doesn't come out of this place. Here's a story. There's this couple, they've been married for 12 years. At year 2, they had kids. They had 2 kids. And they made a choice at the start of their relationship of what they were going to do is that he was going to work full time and she was going to stay home and look after the kids. And so he worked incredibly long hours in order to try and connect, in order to try and bring in enough money that she could stay home with the kids. And it worked. It worked really well. But over time, resentment started to build. Over time, struggle started to step in because she found herself needing help. Because she was putting in everything that she could to the family, to the kids, vacations, like fun times with the kids. And for you mothers, you know what this is like, specifically you mothers that have chosen to stay at home. You put in everything you can. It can be exhausting. And so he would put in the time that he could. He'd put in what he could here and there. Like he was invested, he was connected, but not on the same level that she was. And resentment started to build up from that because she started feeling that he wasn't pulling his weight and she had to do everything. And then she ended up in a bad spiral because she had this poor relationship with her mum, where her mum, in her eyes, was just this goddess that could do everything and manage to function the family while doing this, while doing that. Anyone got that rock star mum that just seems to do absolutely everything? You're like, I don't understand how she did that. And she found herself really, really struggling to maintain life in general, let alone life in general, plus dealing with the family. And she had no time. She felt like I've got no time to myself. I've got no time with him, no quality family time, none of that. And she was struggling. And she was dropping hints, but he never picked up on the hints. And so it got to a point where she's just like, I need out. I need to be able to separate to a degree. And so she started going out. And the going outs got more and more consistent, and she would just disregard the family and go and do whatever she wanted because she needed me time, and she started spiraling out of control in an emotional way as well. And while she was going out consistently, and she ended up connecting with this other guy. And this guy gave her attention. And what ended up happening was an emotional affair. This emotional affair began, but it didn't get any further than that because before it could get further, the husband found out about it. And when they found themselves in marital counseling, they were both convinced that it was over. This is a true story. They were both convinced that it was over. There was no way back from this. He had lost trust from her. He had no trust. He was completely gutted. He had no self-esteem anymore. He didn't feel he was safe to be transparent or vulnerable with her or anything like that. Like all of that was lost. She was absolutely loathing with hatred and bitterness towards him. But they decided, we have 2 kids. We want to at least try to make it work. And they found themselves in marriage counseling. They went through counseling. And what was noted through counseling was that she had this unrealistic expectation that she was placing on her to be everything that her mother was. And so she was driving herself and driving herself and driving herself and driving herself. But then she also discovered that she hated confrontation. So she would never bring it up with him. She would drop subtle hints, but he'd never pick it up. Guys, you know what that's like. Women, if you're dropping subtle hints, they look like this. Just tell us what it is. That'll be really subtle. We'll still struggle to understand it. But she would drop these hints, expecting him to pick it up, but he never did. Why didn't he do it? He was busy, and he thought she had it. And she realized that she had this refusal or inability, however you want to term it, to have confrontation. She ran away from it. This was a single person problem, 2 of them. 2 single person problems from her. He had problems as well, which we'll get to. 2 parts of the single person problem, that she had this unhealthy expectation of what mum was, what mum needed to be. This inability to be able to be confrontational, and that dragged into her marriage. And when she realized that, she realized the part that she had to play. And for him, he realized nearly the same thing. And the major thing for him was he had the same avoidance of confrontation. Because when he was honest, he's like, yeah, I'd seen some of the subtle suggestions, but I didn't really want to deal with it. I didn't really want to talk about it. I didn't really want to go there because I didn't want to have this confrontation. So I just kept on sweeping it under the rug. And when they both realized that these problems were something that carried with them all their lives, they just never actively worked on, when they worked on them separately, they were able to come back together and move forward together. When we expect them to be the perfect person, we set them up for a loss. The myth of the perfect match, it only destroys relationships. It doesn't build them. It doesn't help them. When we expect them to be the perfect person, we lump on them an expectation that was never meant to be given to anyone other than Jesus. So my encouragement to us is, if you're married, if you're dating, if you're not dating yet, it'd be this. Don't expect them you're currently with, future with, are with, to be the perfect person. Rather strive to become the perfect person. How do you do that? I'd suggest you do this. You open your Bible and say, God, speak to me. The psalmist puts it like this. Highlights, this is not going to be verbatim. You can look it up on your own. God, come, search my heart. Point out to me anything that offends you. I wonder if we made that our consistent daily prayer. God, search my heart. Highlight in me anything that offends you. This is my guarantee to you. You do that, allow God to speak to you, allow God to minister to you, and actively allow Him to work on it and draw it out and deal with it. Your marriage will be the best marriage you've ever experienced. How about you stand? I want to pray for you. God, I want to say thank you, Jesus, that you're good. I want to say thank you that you want marriages to flourish. You want marriages that move forward. You want marriages that are healthy. You want marriages that are wholesome. You want marriages that are healing, God. And so I realize that this has confronted some people, Jesus, and this is tough, and this is challenging, and this is heart-wrenching for some of us, God. God, I want to pray over those that as we've gone through and as we've talked about this, God, that they are struggling, Father. I want to pray, Holy Spirit, that you speak to them, that you minister to them, that you remind them that they're not beyond redemption, that their marriage isn't beyond redemption, and there's always hope here. There's always hope in this, God. That when we come to you and we hand this over to you, there's always hope. And so, Jesus, I want to pray for every single one of us, God. I want to pray that we pick up that challenge of just asking this question, God, search my heart. Highlight in me anything that there is that offends you, Jesus. And I want to pray that we are big enough and bold enough to allow you to speak to us, to minister to us, to highlight things in our lives that we need to deal with, Father. And we actively let you confront them and deal with them, Jesus, so that we stop dragging our past into our marriage. I want to pray for everyone, God, that as they go and they have a great week. They have a blessed week, Jesus. That this week, as they work on that, Father, they watch their marriage blossom. They watch their dating relationship flourish, and they watch themselves flourish. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Hey, if you want to chat about any of that, come on the front. I'd love to chat with you. Love to talk with you. Otherwise, head out the front, out to the foyer, whatever that place is called. Grab a tea or coffee. No need to rush off. See you next week.